In the heart of ancient history, among the alleys of Basra, a man was born who would change the course of science forever. His name, al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham, in a time when knowledge was not a luxury, but a dangerous adventure. From early childhood, Ibn al-Haytham was different. He followed the light with his eyes, observed falling water, and asked his father, "Why do our eyes see things?" His questions were never simple, but they marked the beginning of the journey. He grew up in a turbulent era where superstition overshadowed reason and scholars faced a choice: silence or confrontation. Ibn al-Haytham studied the works of the Greeks and reflected on Aristotle's ideas, but he did not accept them blindly. He fled the unrest in Basra and journeyed to Cairo. There, among its ornate walls and calm Nile, the most important chapter of his life would begin. The Caliph al-Hakim summoned him with a grand request to regulate the waters of the Nile. Ibn al-Haytham agreed, but upon facing the reality, he realized the task was impossible. When Ibn al-Haytham informed the Caliph that the Nile project was impossible, he feared for his life. So he feigned madness and was placed under house arrest. There, in the darkness of isolation, true light was born. In his solitude, he began his greatest work, the Book of Optics. It was more than a study of light. It was a revolution against centuries of misconceptions. He sealed the windows and made a small hole in the wall. He observed how light travels in straight lines and saw an inverted image of the world. He had invented the first camera obscura in history. He rejected Aristotle's theory that the eye emits light. He built a model of the eye and proved that light enters it, not the other way around. The truth was as clear as light itself. He didn't settle for theory. He set steps: observation, hypothesis, experiment, analysis, conclusion. Thus, the scientific method was born, centuries before Descartes and Bacon. From the house that had become his prison, Ibn al-Haytham built a full-fledged laboratory. Every candle, every mirror, every piece of glass became a tool to uncover the secrets of light. He conducted an experiment that today forms the cornerstone of optics, tracing rays reflected and refracted through glass, water, and air. He saw what no one before him had seen. With the Book of Optics, Ibn al-Haytham laid the foundations of modern optics. His theories remained a reference in Europe for centuries, influencing minds like Kepler and Newton. Ibn al-Haytham was not only a light scientist, but also a mathematician. He studied spherical mirrors and parabolas, paving the way for geometric optics. He said it clearly: "We do not see with the eye alone, but with the mind that interprets images." He blended physics with philosophy, linking the senses to thought. He tested shadows, observed their lengths, and studied how they bend at angles. These were the moments when the laws of reflection and refraction were born, laws we still study today. He feared no challenge. He rejected taking Aristotle's and Plato's words as sacred truths. He examined, debated, and wrote, "Truth is discovered through experimentation, not transmission." He connected light with perception. He noticed that what we see is influenced by our position, angle, and even time, anticipating modern visual psychology by centuries. For him, science was a way to understand both the soul and the cosmos. Light was not just physics, it was a key to understanding truth. He observed that when light passed through a small hole into a dark room, it projected an inverted image of the outside. Thus was born the idea of the camera obscura, the origin of modern photography. He explained how images form in the eye in a way similar to the camera obscura. He realized the eye does not emit rays, it receives them. He didn't stop at light. He used it to understand motion. He calculated the relative speeds of light in different media, paving the way for future laws of motion. His ideas weren't fully understood in his time, but they became the backbone of the scientific revolution centuries later. He wrote in the language of mathematics and experiment, not poetic eloquence. Though 1,000 years have passed, his name still echoes in books of East and West as the first to turn light into science and experimentation into method. He crafted his own instruments to observe light's reflection and refraction. He did not rely on tradition. He repeated experiments until he saw truth with his own eyes. He broke vision into parts: the eye, the light, the object, and the brain, understanding that only through their harmony does sight become complete. He realized that vision begins in the eye, but is completed in the brain, thus opening the door to visual neuroscience centuries before it existed. He authored the Book of Optics, 7 volumes combining optics, physics, and philosophy. For centuries, it remained unmatched in both the East and West. His translated works reached Europe in the 12th century. Roger Bacon built upon them, then Kepler, then Descartes. Ibn Haytham was the cornerstone. Centuries later, Newton said, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." One of those giants was Ibn al-Haytham. Ibn al-Haytham did not see science as opposing faith, but as the path to understand God's creation. To him, science was devotion, and experiment was truth. He was the first to apply the modern scientific method: observation, hypothesis, experimentation, and conclusion, centuries before Bacon and Galileo. He polished lenses and tested them, discovering how they could magnify images or correct vision. He paved the way for eyeglasses and microscopes. He wasn't just a scientist, he was a philosopher. He asked, what is light? What is darkness? And how do we perceive truth between the two? He discovered the phenomenon of the dark room, light passing through a small hole, creating an inverted image inside. He wrote about the principle of the camera. From Ibn al-Haytham's description of the darkroom, the idea of the camera was born. Centuries later, it was used by artists, then scientists, then filmmakers. He wrote about the speed of light, its behavior in different media, and how it reflects at equal angles of incidence. He was mapping the laws of nature. His lens experiments inspired the invention of eyeglasses in Italy centuries after his death. He didn't know he had lit the path of sight for the world. Dozens of theories, hundreds of experiments, thousands of pages. Ibn al-Haytham laid the foundation for what we now call the science of optics. The Book of Optics, 7 volumes, written in complete solitude. It wasn't just a book, it was a revolution that changed how we see. His work spread through the Islamic world, then translated into Latin. European scholars studied them in Cordoba, refined them in Toledo, and taught them in Paris. He didn't settle for observation. He demanded proof. He didn't accept tradition. He called for investigation. A pioneer of rational method before it became scientific doctrine. He lived in a time of political unrest, but his science was like a ship in a storm, seeking truth amidst the winds of power and religion. He grew old, but never stopped. Even in old age, he wrote, experimented, and questioned, as if the light within him never dimmed. In his final years, his body weakened, but his mind remained sharp. He wrote about gravity, physics, and astronomy, until his final breath. He passed away quietly in Cairo in 1040 AD. No drums sounded, no statues raised. yet his ideas echoed loudly in the minds of scientists. What Ibn al-Haytham wrote was not forgotten. It was carried through history to Galileo and Kepler, then to Newton, a scientific legacy without borders. Just as he studied light, he became a light guiding us through the darkness of ignorance. He wasn't just a man of his time, but of all time. He lived seeking truth and died leaving a lit path for others. This isn't the end of the story, but its beginning for those who choose to think. When we trace light in laboratories today, we walk in his footsteps. He wasn't just a scholar, he was the founder of modern optics. He was centuries ahead of his time. He imagined laws not yet discovered and thought in ways his peers couldn't grasp. He stood alone, yet saw farther than all. He united reason and faith, science and reverence. He saw in the cosmos a precise order and felt that understanding it was an act of worship. From a narrow prison cell emerged ideas that lit up ages. He wasn't broken by isolation. Ignorance was broken before him. Every idea we write today, every experiment we conduct, bears his fingerprint. Ibn al-Haytham's legacy still shines in every mind that dares ask, why? Before Ibn al-Haytham, the world was explained by myth, not by experiment. Shadows and sorcery, not light and lens. Then came a man who literally changed the way we see. His greatest achievement wasn't just in optics. It was in method, experimentation, hypothesis, proof. Tools we inherited from him today. No observatory bears his name. No university displays his portrait. Yet anyone who studies light carries a part of him. In the darkness, Ibn Haytham wasn't just a candle. He was the beginning of the sun, and his light still guides seekers today. The pursuit of truth is a path with no end, and I was merely one of its travelers. Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham.